Today we're going to talk about Socrates, and, to borrow a word from modern slang, he can really only be described as something of a Chad. Born in approximately 469 BCE, like most of the cool historical figures, we don't know that much about Socrates' youth. What we do know is that he was not born into a particularly wealthy family. We also know that as the older Socrates got, the more he entered the public eye. See, Socrates had a nasty habit of randomly walking up to strangers and asking them questions until they became flabbergasted and exploded. Not necessarily literally, although given his student Plato's frequent use of exaggerations, I would not be surprised if that's actually in one of his stories. But this practice made Socrates a renowned man across Athens for all the wrong reasons, and he quickly became very controversial as people either started following him or just hating him for his constant questions. This got to a point where he became commonly referred to as the gadfly of Athens, but rather than being offended by the nickname, he embraced it, proclaiming, I am now a sort of gadfly, given to the state by the god, and the state is like a great and noble steed who is tardy in his motions, owing to his very size, and requires to be stirred into life. So that's one point for the chat chart. Socrates didn't just ask questions, though. He was also a teacher, using a method that Plato would eventually call the Socratic method. The Socratic method effectively states that through civic debate with others and yourself, you learn to challenge your own views and get closer to the truth. Man, if only American politics is something like that. It is actually from his students that we know anything about him, since he didn't write anything down himself. Notably, amongst his students was Plato, who we will be talking about more in future episodes. Also, as a side note, he had a totally sick beard, which definitely adds points to the Chad chart, so yeah. Back to Socrates, though. Socrates was a lot like a Minecraft villager, in that he is very useful in what he gives you, but also incredibly annoying. So annoying, in fact, he should probably just be locked up for everybody's good. At least, that's what the Athenian government thought, and so they did that and put him on trial. Throughout the trial, Socrates defended himself with some totally badass quotes, including, but not limited to, While I have life and strength, I shall never cease from the practice and teaching of philosophy, and the unexamined life is not worth living. That's another point for the chat chart. Now, at any point, Socrates could have just agreed to stop preaching philosophy and the charges would have been dropped. Being a man with total balls of steel, Socrates refused and then proceeded to argue his way through court. Ultimately, however, Socrates was sentenced to death by the Athenian government by a vote. However, under Athenian law, the defendant could propose another sentence, and if the judges thought it reasonable, it could be accepted. After thinking for a moment, Socrates declared that he wanted to be treated like an Olympic athlete, with as much food, wine, and housing as he wanted. Sadly for our boy Socrates, Athens refused and sentenced him to death. But much like the later Jesus Christ after him, Socrates used his death as a total platform for his movement, declaring that the next thing I want to do is to make a prophecy to you, the ones who voted against me. I'm now at the moment when human beings are most prone to being turned prophet, when they're about to die. I tell you, you Athenians who have become my killers, and just as soon as I'm dead, you'll meet with a punishment that, Zeus knows, will be much harsher than the ones you meted out to me by putting me to death. Finally, Socrates said some of his last words. The hour of departure has arrived, and we go our ways. I to die, and you to live. Which is better, God only knows. With that, he drank his poison and collapsed, dead. The life of Socrates is fascinating and crucial for anyone who wants to study Western philosophy. Socrates, after all, is referred to as the father of Western philosophy, from which most of the lines of Western ethics, moral complexion, and the general philosophical thought stem from. Socrates teaches us how to live a generally good life, namely by examining everything and not being afraid of questions. He encourages us not to be afraid of doing good, and to always try and do good wherever possible, to exercise our beliefs until they fail, and then revise them based on our findings and repeat. Minecraft is a very simple game, especially when playing Skyblock. Your resources are incredibly limited, and the amount of time it takes to do anything is immense. But the simplicity of the game is also its beauty. Socrates says that we must always be asking questions, not be afraid, and willing to grow. All of this in the pursuit of excellence. In Skyblock, we work hard at amassing all of our blocks, of as many varieties as we can, while taking caution not to waste. But eventually, we do have to take risks. If we want to achieve excellence, we have to leave our little island, our comfort zone, and expand to new islands, sometimes islands we cannot always see. We may not always know what is beyond the edge of the void, but sometimes we have to try anyway. Because there may just be another island out there, somewhere, with something we need. Something to make our little island a little more beautiful. This has been the life and times of Socrates. See you in the next video.